forthcoming. I will be introducing our reader tonight, my dear friend, AM Ringwalt. So tonight, I have the privilege of introducing the inimitable AM Ringwalt, poet, writer, musical artist, friend, and 2019 Nicholas Sparks Fellow. AM's words are haunting and sonic. In an excerpt published in Entropy magazine from a book-length essay exploring memory and symbolism, AM asks, "What is a question that has stayed with you through time, clung to you like an inhalation? What is a question that pulls you from syncope? For me, it follows, what does it feel like to be in the stream?" AM's work enacts this each time. With each word read or heard, we're immersed into resonance. We access the deep vibrations of the language. We're entranced. We may even be put into a trance. We linger in meticulously crafted sentences and find the music in words, music that washes over us in cascades, waves, rivulets, and ever-turning wheels. Interspersed with moments of stillness, her music entices, summons, and invites us to wade deeper into the stream. Another standout quality of AM's writing is the way that she blurs genres and boundaries. She often oscillates between lyrical lines, literary criticism, memoir, and other modes of writing in the same space. No matter what mode she's writing in, poetry, prose, hybrid works, she crafts language into works that move effortlessly and show us possibilities we may never have considered before. AM's words also bear a calm strength, an unwavering boldness that allows AM to ask tough questions, to nudge us toward contemplation and reckoning. She guides us past ghosts, floods us with memory, and trusts us to reckon with pain, all the while leading us to stillness, to the clearing. In the same excerpt from Entropy Mag, AM says, "I need you to listen with me. More than a request, this is a beckoning, a key to immersing ourselves in her work. Listening is the way in and the way through her soundscapes." Before we welcome AM back to share some of her more recent work, I wanted to highlight that her words can be found in Tarpaulin Sky Magazine, Kenyon Review, Interim Poetics, Entropy Magazine, Bennington Review, and many more. And her music has also been called Haunted by The Wire and Deceptively Rich by Bandcamp, and is on streaming sites across the world. Please welcome AM back to Notre. Wow. John, do you know how to make this make sound?
Oh, that's an excellent question.
It's so awesome to be here. Thank you, Scarlett. So I have a book I want to read from over some sounds, which is what's happening. Okay. Alright, so I've been really grateful to have the gift that is the Sparks Prize and to be able to read and write as much as I want, whenever I want, and be able to explore community in a new way. It's just really changed my life, so thank you and thanks for being here. I started a book and then realized I needed some more time on it, and so then I started writing about this song that was following me everywhere. And I guess all you need to know about it is it's a drone, so it's maybe some of you wouldn't call it a song, and it's written and performed by a French composer and Buddhist named Eliane, and it's supposed to be in biography of this monk named Jetson Milarepa who murdered 30 people and then became a monk and was really influential. And I thought that was pretty cool. Not that he killed 30 people, but the possibilities for a drone to be a biography, I was really thinking about that a lot. And yeah, I guess I just wrote this. So I'll read some of it, and you can hear the song too, because it's really awesome. Jetson Mila in the car, moving out from the garage, like a hand thrust forth from a curtain,
like drool from the mouth, baby from the womb. Every time I start the car, it's Jetson Mila through the speakers, automatic. The more the song repeats itself in this interior, metal, plastic, leather, glass, the more time blurs, contains the drone. The more I sweat, I sing. Only the drone, out the window, only the drone. When I hear the song, my body transposed. Alone at the height of the mountain, oil on my lips. My eyes close at the tremble of a sun-cast shadow. My feet press bare to grass. Wind blows my hair across my face, self-shroud. Only the drone, only the drone. When I hear the song, my body transposed. I listen to Jetson Mila in the car, and I listen to Jetson Mila on the porch. On the porch, from a worn-down laptop, I couldn't tell if the song was the traffic below me, or if the song was imperceptible, was everything, wind constituted. I listened, and I couldn't discern. I listened, and I couldn't discern. In half-sleep, I blur the names, Eliane Radig, Liliane Girardon. It's the UE, the AU, it's you have to wrench the poem out of poetry, extract an 18, she wrote. Once I told my students about her cine poem, her present interstice, her in-between interval, asked what they would fuse, asked how they would transport, asked of what, where will you take me? Asked, what glitch? Only the drone, only the drone. When I hear the song, my body transposed. Jetson Mila, continuous cine poem, cinematic lyric, negative space in sound, pulling me as its material through the parking garage, Gallatin Road, lion statues, too tall grass. Jetson Mila, immersive or atmospheric. Jetson with magnolia, Jetson with moon, this jetsam mile. I'm either plunged into it or disoriented, not sure where in space the sound comes from. Not sure where, traffic below me or blood through carotid. I cut a scene to bleed it, asphalt underfoot, where clouds loom high like mountains, impossibly thick, where the mountains impossibly thick and moving, where the drone stays still, it stays. I'm alone in a room with only mirrors on the walls. When I look into the mirror, water floods from behind the veil of my hair until my hair is also a stream, and I bend back to float with it, to become it, water through mirrors. I'm a mother or a baby, and I'm not sure what it is that I weep for. I'm not sure what it is that I weep for. A forked candle wick, smoke, burned rosemary into the dark. Only mirrors on the walls. A young girl walks to the walls with her brothers, watches the sunlight illuminate their white blonde hair, hay-white hair, the color of the moon. They imagine other figures in the mirrors with them. A palomino horse, 2 black dogs, honey dripping from the ceiling. Their grandfather singing opera to the herbs in the garden, to the fountain in the garden, to the rabbit underneath the olive tree. The siblings imagine what foods they'll scoop the honey into. Celery, no. Sourdough, no. What about seashells? They'll eat the honey from the shells like oysters. Rosemary oil poured slowly from a small glass jar. You watch it cool at the center of your left palm before rubbing it into a circle 3 times, into your fingers and then onto your scalp. You do so from a darkened bathroom into a darkened hallway before a mirror. Although you do not look to your own reflection, you look behind yourself to see the sunlight from the window slice into the cracks of the wood-paneled floor. Warmth. The warmth becomes you, the smell of rosemary. Do you remember at the Louvre, descending down an escalator through the prismatic entryway? Do you remember the miniature stone statues of lions in a yard of unkempt grass? Do you remember a time when someone asked you for your name, and instead it felt like an accusation? Who are you? Do you remember your second name, the one you gave yourself before sleep as a child? Do you remember the color of the river, muddied like a slug? Or do you remember floating in the sea and feeling for a moment the weight of your body dissipate? There was a dolphin in the distance. There was seaweed wrapped gently around your right foot, which you pointed to the mud beneath you, to the floor of the sea, to the minnows. Still, the seaweed wasn't a tether. It was fluid, flowing around you and then not. You wake with scratches across your abdomen, lines of red between your rib cage. Were you trying to escape yourself? You stand in the shower, chin to your chest, eyes closed. You imagine rosemary oil between your thighs instead of blood. You imagine floating in the Mediterranean Sea. You imagine floating in the Pacific. Your skin turns flushed under the shower head's heat, the scratches still illuminated. The scratches like elongated rosemary needles. Do you remember the water of your hometown? Do you remember the water of your birth? Imagine it flooding through the Louvre, gently through the legs of statues of Apollo, like silk. Do you remember asking, or was it me, what it means to write a biography in sound? Do you remember wondering, or was it me, how a song can contain a life? Do you remember wondering what a drone can contain? With every question, my voice refracts, warbles, my voice refracts, glitch in a drone. A young girl can't remember the day she learned to swim. A young girl doesn't mind the heat. The air dense creates a prism, and she is suspended in a center. She moves this way, are her feet touching the ground? For years, until her body begins to swell, stretch marks line her thighs. She thinks they look like baby worms. She lifts her arms across her eyes to dim the light, to nap a while, and the smell of salt water clings to her like perfume. She is suspended within the movement of the sea, the tide. A young girl doesn't control the narrative. A young girl is silent when she doesn't feel safe. A young girl wears the narrative against her like a second skin until it hangs, an extra set of limbs, visibly false. A young girl doesn't know what it is that she weeps for. A young girl doesn't know what it is that she weeps for. She asks, but her mother can't say. She weeps before her mother, only to be left alone, eyes swollen. She sneaks into the kitchen late at night to open the jar of rosemary, to smell the sprigs, cool glass in her palm. A young girl opens her mouth in the morning and only the drum. A young girl is a knife in the water. A young girl is somebody's daughter. A young girl waits in the bathtub every night for the moment the water shifts from hot to tepid. Then she closes her eyes and waits again, to become something else. The flowers beside the sink left in silence by her mother, peony maybe, rose thorn, or the cold water running from the sink at full pressure in the dark. When the water from the bath is drained, she looks to the mirror, skin pruning. She plucks a petal from the vase and places it over her mouth. A young girl believes in sincerity. A young girl believes in fevers and a glass of ice. A young girl sings hymns backwards. A young girl holds court in a rose garden surrounded by sphinxes. A young girl teaches choreography to dogs. Or a young girl hides in a stranger's garden enclosed in silence. The garden mirrorless, the garden without rosemary. Still, a young girl as she ages doesn't hide her face. Still, the mother's closed door, the worms on her legs, the tide of the sea. She decides she won't explain herself. She wears her face like a mirror, reflecting the roses, the soil, the pools of rainwater. What is the narrative of the drone? What control shapes the sound? I imagine Jets and Mila under the soil the roses spurt out from, in the buckets of water, in the smell of the garage, in the veins of the statues of lions. The young girl believes the lions are sphinxes. She imagined it so. The young girl becomes me, indecipherably. Time blurs in this becoming. The time of the drone, without destination, a car moving out from garage. In the worst times, no one asked me for my name. Words were fixed to me, blind, gray. I said to myself, muscles moving to pierce the silence, a young girl doesn't control the narrative. I said it through walls of snow, false mirrors. I said to no one, let me come home. New legs grew from my hips, forcing me onto my knees, on all fours. Jets and Mila, what control shapes the sound? Every voice that loved me was outside of my environment. Every voice that loved me, I traveled to. Every voice that loved me visited me, smudged hot rosemary on the soles of my feet. We looked into mirrors and said, you. So slowly, so thickly, it became the drone. I cut a scene to bleed it, asphalt underfoot, where clouds loom high like mountains, impossibly thick, where the mountains, impossibly thick and moving, where the drone stays still, it stays. A young girl knows every silence is misinformation. A young girl knows every speech is a shadow untrue. She carries this with her, a form of suspension. She hovers somewhere between silent and speaking, the car always leaving the garage, the seaweed always draping around her foot, fluid flowing around her and then not, where the drone is return, always, where the drone is change, beyond her control. Breath, her body's drone, breath somewhere between silent and speaking. I carry her with me. We meet in the mirror, the warmth still becoming. A young girl doesn't have any enemies. A young girl wants to see everyone she knows in the sea, their bodies distant in the waves, their bodies in horizon light. In the sea, in the waves, in the water ever warming, she'd sing. Here are her brothers, here are her children imagined, here are her violences unpredictable, water upon skin like bells, the bells ever refracting, inviting more bodies to the water. A young girl doesn't apologize when she doesn't feel safe. She turns in her prism towards the dogs, to the coyotes in the backyard, to the ice-covered water. She asks always without audience, what does this mean? Only the drone. A young girl sings to the ghosts in the trees, but she doesn't know of the Jetson. A young girl speaks his language, but she doesn't know of the Jetson. She says, lion, lapis, mine stream. She sings, lapis stream, lion. She walks through a field of uncut grass to get to school each morning. She arrives in her classroom with a black eye and is interrogated by the boys. You know you have a mark on your face, right? They ask. It's black, like a black eye. You know that, right? They ask. The boys deduce the meaning of her bruise while she stands still. A young girl doesn't explain herself. I want to hold my arms open for her, to enact a prism for her suspension, her hovering. This is the space you can safely enter. I want to say. I know what it is that I weep for. What is the responsibility of a young girl? To learn to breathe with a rose petal over her mouth, to inherit silence and breathe against it, to hold false notes pitching above the drone line and breathe them back into sound, work is tiring. A young girl bites her arm in preparation, numbs. A young girl looks up the mountain. The rose petal quivers in her palm, lifelike, still damp from the humidity of the bath. Her mother's voice echoes from somewhere, a hush. This time, a young girl places the petal over her ear. She listens to herself. The Jetson, I think, inhabits a mountain peak beyond the clouds. But where are the bodies he murdered? 30. Who forgives the Jetson? In the pulse in the drone, in a young girl's breath, the bodies of the dead come back to life in the sea, in horizon light, surrounded by bells. The young girl always inviting more bodies to the water. I pull my hair back with rosemary oil. I'm on my back in the snow at the base of the mountain. I look to my reflection in the mirror always with me, a shield, a connector. I feel the warmth of the oil at the backs of my ears, hold it with my listening. I make my own garden here, with rosemary oil, with the mountain, the mirror, my mother. Snow still at the peak. What was the sound of my childhood? The sound of the ocean and the lake at once crashing upon the shore and receding, crashing upon the shore and receding. What was the sound of my childhood? The sound of frost upon the lake's surface, percussive ice in the trees. I want to float up the mountain on my back, the slope sloughing dead weight from me. I want the drone of the snow, of the sea. I want the water of my birth. I want to float up the mountain on my back, the slope sloughing dead weight from me. I want the drone of the snow, the drone of becoming. Still, somewhere, a car moving out from the garage. After singing to the ghosts, the Jetson moved towards the mountain. He sang for winter. For 6 months he stayed in a drone of the howling snow. His disciples thought he died, but he watched them from the body of a snow leopard. And he sang for the snowflakes. They fell like tiny wheels, like bees flying around, then dropping down. They heard his voice from the back of a cave. His voice called them back, not body. The tiny wheels of snow, the pulse of the drone, of the blood of the leopard becoming the Jetson entering himself again by way of the leopard. A young girl doesn't know this, but she feels the possibility of becoming. What is the responsibility of a young girl? To learn to breathe with a rose petal over her mouth, to carry the mountain down to land piece by piece. I was a young girl once, and I feel her within me as an aching. I was a young girl once, and I feel the water she swims in within me, pulse of my wrist, pulse of my ankle. I was never a mother, but I mother becoming. To learn to breathe with a rose petal over my ear. This is what the bruise mean, night blooming. I cut a seam to bleed it, asphalt underfoot, where clouds loom high like mountains, impossibly thick, where the mountains impossibly thick and moving, where the drone stays still, it stays.
That's what I got. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. I don't know if that was. I have other stuff I can read, but I don't know. That's probably not good.